and if convicted, he will be going to prison for up to 20 years. Ding dong YouTube, the Jobless Coder here, and today I want to give you my top 10 red flags that the company you are working for, or the company that you plan to work for, is either a scam or being illegally operated. Now, the reason for making this video is it's been just a little over a year now since my paycheck bounced, and that led to a very long process that took 4 months of fighting my boss for pay that I wasn't given before I was eventually fired in February. And I plan to do an entire video series kind of explaining the ins and outs of everything that happened. But the reason that I'm talking about it now is because I just recently learned that the former CEO of my old company, the former company that I used to work for, his name is Steven Nerayoff, is actually arrested. He got arrested in September on allegations of extortion, and if convicted, he will be going to prison for up to 20 years. Now guys, before I actually get into each of the individual red flags, I want to just say that if you like the content that I'm making or the theme of this channel, then definitely subscribe for any future upcoming videos. As well, be sure to leave a comment below at the end of this video on how many of the 10 red flags your company actually fulfills. And I'm going to say this, if you have 1 to 3 flags, then definitely use your best judgment. Be cautious, make sure to do your research for this company, either before you join and agree to work for them, or if you're currently actually employed there, make sure to do your research. If you have between 4 to 7 different red flags, I'm going to say that's a very sketchy situation. You definitely want to be looking into other options, maybe applying for other companies. If you have 8 or more of these top 10 red flags, run. Literally pack your bags and run for the hills. Get the hell away from your boss, from the CEO, whoever else is at the company, whoever's associated with it, because that is a flat out job scam or illegally operated. Now, here's the big one, guys. If you have all 10 of the listed red flags, then make sure to leave a comment below with the name of this company. I want to hear about it, because the company that I happen to be working for had all 10 of these red flags. Now, the company in question, it's called Cloud Parc Inc, and it is one of 30 or more different ICOs, that stands for Initial Coin Offering, startup tech companies that this man Steven Nerayoff was associated with. And so all 30 of those companies are fraudulent. And so I'm going to start now with the list of all of the red flags that Cloud Parc Inc fulfills. Red flag number 1 is if they pay you in foreign currency. Now, listen to this. If your company happens to be a foreign company, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Consider this. Microsoft is based in the US. They're based out of Seattle, but they have headquarters here in Vancouver, in Canada. And I think they also might have an office in Toronto. But I can guarantee you that anybody employed for Microsoft Canada is being paid Canadian dollars for their work. But if you're being paid in a foreign currency, that is a big red flag. While I was working for Cloud Parc, I was making $25 US an hour, even though I was working in Canada. And when I asked my boss about getting paid Canadian dollars for work done in Canada, he basically said, this is the way it's done, take it or leave it. We're not going to make any exceptions for you. The other thing too was that I had to wait for the check to come from New York. I was only paid once a month, not every 2 weeks like a lot of jobs will do. So I had to work an entire month, and then I had to wait another month before I actually got the pay. Because when that check came 10 days later in the mail from New York, and I went to cash it in a Canadian bank account, here's the thing, guys. If you want to put US dollars into Canadian bank account, they will place a 15 business day hold on those funding, meaning that I wasn't getting paid until the end of the next month. Alright, now red flag number 2 is if everything is done faceless. While I was working there was about 20 people or so that were employed at the company. I only ever met 2 people in this company. I've never met Steven Nerayoff in my entire life. I will use the term my boss interchangeably between the man who was running the company, the CEO, and the man who I formerly called my boss, the CTO. His name is Tom Wong, and this is Tom right here. Now, When I would say it's faceless, a lot of the work that was done remotely by other developers in other countries. One of them was local, a couple were in the States, there was another guy in Europe, and we would have these every other day meetings on Skype where it would just be basically somebody's picture and their voice, and that was all I ever knew of these people. I only ever met two people in the office in Vancouver, and that was Tom, the CTO, and another guy who I'm not going to name because he doesn't really have anything to do with the business management side of the company. He's just as much a victim as I was. The other interesting aspect of the facelessness of this company was that everything was locked behind a login portal. None of the stuff was done publicly. All of the technology, the software that we built was for specialized clients. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that the company is illegal if you're doing some specialized work that only your clients have access to, but we had a user database where various different people would do different things on the website, and every time I turned around, the database was changing. Names were disappearing. Names of people I've never heard of were logging onto this site, and I was like, who's this and who's that? Every time we had a meeting, Tom would bring up some new person I've never heard of in my life, and I'm like, this is weird. The one time too, I was even staying late at the office and security came by doing their rounds and they just wanted to check that I had the key card access into the building, right? That I was actually supposed to be there. And the name that was registered to the key card was not even mine. Tom never even bothered to put my name on the key card. It was still the former guy that I guess left the company before me. And so there was all of this really weird stuff with people and names that I've never heard of. And every time I turned around, I didn't know how many employees we had. If we had 10, 20, 35 employees, it was all faceless. Red flag number 3 is if there's any conflicting information, we would have meetings and Tom would say something about how Steven Nerayoff was the CEO of the company, right? But if you went on CloudParc.com, the website, he's not even listed as the CEO. He was listed as being one of the board directors or something like that. And you can actually check this on the Wayback Machine. The other thing too is after his arrest in September, it removed all mention of his name from the site. His name, his picture, everything of Stevens is gone from cloudparc.com. And like I said, when you're dealing with so many people that are logging onto the site that you don't even know who they are or what business or organization they're associated with, if there's conflicting information, that's a big red flag. Red flag number 4 is if your boss hires you without ever testing your knowledge or your ability or your skills. This was the easiest interview I had ever done in my life because they didn't even ask me a single question about, oh, what would you do in this situation, or if your coworker was arguing. It was literally just a show and tell. I went in there and he kind of showed me the software that they were building and he said, oh, do you think you can help? And I was like, oh yeah, I can totally be productive. And it was that easy to get a job. He knew that I was dropping out of university, so there was no question about whether or not I had a degree. He was aware that I didn't. And he never once gave me a coding test. There wasn't even an on-paper test of different simple coding questions that most other companies are going to give you. Red flag number 5 is if your references are never actually contacted. Now, one of my references happens to be my high school principal, and I was down at the high school today for the first time in several years, and I got to see him again. And so I'm talking about this arrest, and I'm talking about the company. And it's typically standard to phone up your references just before you apply or just after, just to give them a heads up that, hey, maybe somebody's going to contact you and ask for a reference. And he told me that he was never ever contacted. He was contacted by my landlord, but my boss never called him up. Red flag number 6 is if it's an ICO. I mentioned that before. Initial coin offering, and CloudParc was an ICO. Now, this is more rampant in the tech industry because when you talk about currency, money is backed by a country. You got the Canadian dollar, you've got the US dollar, and it's all held to the gold standard. But cryptocurrency is a lot different because it's not backed by a country, it's backed by a company. So every company can have their own currency. As a result, you have thousands of different cryptocurrencies, and the market is just flooded with all of this scam and all of this illegality, because when a company goes public, they can can either go IPO, stands for initial public offering, and that's traded on a variety of different stock exchange markets, such as the Fortune 500 companies, or you can go ICO. And this was one of the biggest reasons that caused financial strain within the company and why I wasn't paid for 4 months, was because we were backed by cryptocurrencies that had no legitimacy behind them. And so this is what this man is going to jail for: extortion of some other company that's also running on cryptocurrencies. If you see a company that is working with cryptocurrencies, that is super dangerous. The entire market, it's unregulated. And the thing behind unregulated markets is it's like the Wild West. Everybody gets to do whatever the hell they want because there's no regulations. So if you see an ICO or you're working for a company that's talking about going ICO, you should either advise other people, such as your boss in the company, that that's a very dangerous move, or you should get the hell out of Dodge. Red flag number 7 is if your company has multiple fake addresses or fake phone numbers, or even none at all. If you Google Cloud Parc Inc., there isn't an official address registered to Google. And I'll tell you that the address of the office I was working, downtown Vancouver, is not found anywhere on any of the websites. There is on the main company's website some address to some location out in Brooklyn, but I doubt it's an actual office space. It's probably the middle of some empty, deserted parking lot. There was so many different phone numbers. I can't tell you how many different phone numbers Tom has. When I filed the complaint with WorkBC against him and they tried to do a little investigation into this company, they phoned up some of these numbers and they sent emails to some of these addresses, and they either went to some whatever pre-recorded like voice box message, or they just were flat out ghosted. Nobody responded to any of their emails. Red flag number 8 is if your boss does very, very nice things for you over and above the company benefits. If the company goes out every Friday night and the boss buys you dinner, then that's probably going to be listed as one of the benefits. But if there's certain nice things, now this one's a bit difficult to judge, because there are genuine good people in the world, but I find more often than not the ones who are especially good people, like Tom was an especially good boss, then they're the ones who are the most dangerous, because they use their niceness and all the wonderful things they do for you as an argument against you. Because now if you want to complain against them, like, hey, I haven't been paid in 4 months, oh, well, I've done all these wonderful nice things for you and you've just gone and stabbed me in the back. No, dude, you literally aren't paying me for the work I'm doing. And some of the nice things that Tom did was taking me flying in his personal plane. I hadn't been flying in many years because I was in the Air Cadets and I just couldn't afford to after I graduated high school. So I got to go flying in his personal plane. I needed help with the cost of moving, and I had already taken out a student loan. I went to the banks, they wouldn't loan me, and so I'm freaking out. I don't know how I'm going to pay for some cargo trailer to move all of my furniture out to Vancouver. Well, Tom steps in, Miracle Man Tom. He gives me $1,500 to go and buy a cargo trailer. No questions asked. I signed a document, a little thing that he wrote up that said I would pay him back. And when I had the money, I did pay him back, and everything was wonderful and sunshine, lollipops, and rainbows. But at the end of the day, none of it mattered. When he fired me, it was like he didn't give a crap about me. And so if your boss acts like your buddy, if he becomes your best friend in the world, then that's really bad. That's really sketchy, because it just means he's abusing you, or he has the ability to abuse you, and you're gonna stand back like I did and say, oh, well, it's not that bad, or it'll get better, or oh, I trust him because he's my friend and he did all these wonderful nice things for me. But at the end of the day, he's a scumbag and should go to prison. Red flag number 9 is if your boss tells you that he only works with people that he has known from the past, or that he has worked with in the past. In my case, I happen to be the exception to the rule, but he did tell me I typically only hire people, or I only associate with people who I've already worked with at other companies. Now, what does that tell me? Well, it tells me that essentially you're running your own little cult, is what you're doing. You're associating yourself with people who are going to back you up and defend you, even if you're breaking the law, and he broke dozens of laws, let me tell you that. And so when I wasn't being paid, I was the only one making a fuss because I wasn't his buddy. Everybody else was like, oh, well, this has happened before and it usually resolves itself. And yeah, that's all fine and dandy. If you're 35 years old and you've got all this savings in the bank, you can go 6 months without pay and not have to worry about losing your house. But for me, I'm living paycheck to paycheck. And so I needed the money like now. And I was the only one causing the fuss about it. Well, I was the only one fired because I caused the fuss about it. I'm the big bad guy because I'm the one who took legal action against them by filing a complaint with WorkBC. Now guys, before I give you my final red flag of the night, I want to thank anybody that's watched the video this far, and also want to remind you to subscribe to the channel if you like this content. Now I'll give you the final red flag that a company you are working for is either illegally operated or a scam. Now here it is. Red flag number 10. If the company that you are working at changes CEOs like somebody changes their socks. And I mentioned this before, Steven Nerayoff was never actually listed on the website as being the CEO, even though it was talked about within company lore that he's our CEO. And now that he's arrested, he's not even listed on the website as being anything to the company. And while I was even employed during the summer of 2018, I was told that we're getting some other new CEO. His name is Keith Ko, and he's associated with Nerayoff and Tom Wong. And even before that, you can use the Wayback Machine on CloudParc.com and look at who they list as the CEO. They've gone through 4 or 5 different CEOs in the past 2 years alone. And so, if they're changing CEOs this frequently, you know there's something seriously wrong. Because a CEO, a genuine CEO of a real company is going to stick there for a good amount of time. Especially if it's a good, stable company where they're making good money. But if they're changing CEOs, it's either a scam, or maybe this company is not a scam, but it's just not doing well financially. Why would you want to work there anyways? You don't have job security, you're going to be out of employment when they go bankrupt. Or even if you have multiple CEOs. I don't know half the time when I was working at Cloud Parc whether we had 1, 2, or even 3 CEOs, because names were just being thrown around interchangeably, and I wake up one morning and this guy's the CEO, and then he's the CEO, somebody's listed on the website as being the CEO, and I'm pretty sure that's illegal. Now, I want to thank everybody for watching to the end of the video, and I also want to ask in the comments below if you have any other red flags for a company that I didn't list. And as I mentioned before, give me a number. Give me the name of those companies. If the company you're working at matches all 10 of these, I want to hear about it because it's just as bad as Cloud Parc, and I want to get the word out there so nobody else ever works for these companies again. Thank you though for watching the video. Have a wonderful evening.